The first president of the United States, George Washington, began experiencing respiratory problems and sore throat in December 1799. The medical staff at his disposal as a former president allowed them to begin diagnosing and treating his ailment by draining his blood. Less than 2 days after complaining of a sore throat, Washington passed dead after physicians drained a total of 2.5 liters of blood from him. Medical experts disagree on what caused Washington's breathing problems, but they can't disagree that removing that much blood from him wasn't the best course of action and may have even led to his death in the process of treating an illness he may have recovered from on his own. Over the past 2 centuries, we've learned a great deal about the human body, ailments, medical best practices, and therapies, and it has helped us enjoy longer lifespans overall, a dramatic decrease in newborn mortality, and improved quality of life for those with medical needs. Like medicine, economics is a dynamic discipline that has real-world consequences for people's daily lives. It is understandable that mainstream science is given all the credit when discussing the dramatic improvement in human well-being over the past few centuries. The improvements in physics, medicine, and chemistry are obvious every time you use a telephone, peruse the aisles of a well-stocked grocery store, or, don't die of a common sickness. However, much of this progress was made possible and sped up by the discovery of what an economy is and how to operate one efficiently. Although less obvious, there is a compelling case to be made that developments in financial systems and trade practices have contributed as much to our current level of affluence as any of the technological breakthroughs of the past several centuries. This might indicate that in the future, with enough technological and economic progress, everyone could live as lavishly as today's billionaires do. I realize it is a bold assertion, so let's examine some evidence to support it. The question of how much we know about economics, though, becomes much more pressing in light of this. Are we the 18th century equivalent of quacks who tried to heal the economy but ended up making things worse? Or has our common understanding of economics reached a point where only incremental gains can be made? So let's answer a few fundamental questions to find out. So how exactly do developments in economics result in better conditions for common people? How can we evaluate how far we have come in our grasp of economics? Why do we need economics understanding? What economics is in its broadest sense is essential to comprehending the development of our species' economic knowledge. Economics is a branch of social science that analyzes the relationships between people and valuables. The same thing can be said by noting that physics is the study of matter and its interactions with space and time. Both physicists and economists seek answers to fundamental issues about the cosmos, but the latter's focus is on the primary economic problem: how to satisfy an infinite number of wants with finite means. Unfortunately, there is no way to fix the economy's fundamental issue, but it can be simplified into 4 individual inquiries. Which outcomes are desired? What is the optimal output? Just how should it be manufactured? For whom exactly should it be made? Everything written by economists is an attempt to answer these questions in order to create marginally better outcomes, whether by reallocating resources in a way that makes people happier, or by simply finding a way to produce more with the resources we already have. Even the most comprehensive economic theory, capitalism, is only a set of tools for addressing these issues. Capitalism's definition of a good is something that is in high demand on the market, is produced as cheaply and efficiently as possible, and is distributed to those who are willing and able to pay for it. While not flawless, the system is highly effective at distributing assets and encouraging the deployment of additional resources to boost the happiness of its constituents. Yet, there are many questions that cannot be satisfactorily answered by the capitalist economic system. Greenhouse gas emissions are the most significant of these things with a negative value, but they also include garbage, sewage, chemical waste, spent nuclear fuel, and so on. Without government involvement, the market system of capitalist economies lacks a mechanism to assign the costs of creating these things to the parties responsible for generating them, despite the fact that people place a monetary value on their absence. This may sound cruel, but from a completely cold-hearted rational economics perspective, this category can also be used for those who are unable to produce more value than they consume due to age, disability, or some other factor. While there have been some infamously poor approaches to this problem in the past, it doesn't have to be as bad as it seems. As the average age of a country's population rises, so does the number of people in that country who will become economically dependent on those who are still able to work. This means that capitalism, the fundamental framework by which we operate every sophisticated economy in the world today, is terrific at answering some problems, but not so great at answering others. Carbon pricing and mandatory retirement savings are only two examples of the many attempts by various economies to close these gaps. However, these solutions typically end up causing even more issues. Now, to return to the idea that economics is merely another science like physics, a fascinating parallel can be drawn. Most questions concerning the heavens were explained by geocentrism, the notion that the Earth was at the center of the cosmos and that everything else, including the sun, revolved around it. It served its purpose for navigation, monitoring the seasons, and anything else that required looking up. There were certain discrepancies in the observed motions of the heavenly bodies, but these were only holes that were filled with solutions that often introduced new complications. Do you recognize that remark? Could capitalism replace geocentrism as the guiding economic theory, just as it did in astronomy? To be honest, we have no idea. Even better, tomorrow may bring us a system that is so revolutionary in the way we operate economies that it will be like entering the space age. It's absurd to think of, yet it actually occurred and the results were massive. We owe our current trajectory of tremendous global economic expansion to the Industrial Revolution, which in turn owes its success to the invention and widespread use of steam power, among a small number of other technologies. But at the same time, another form of mercantilism emerged on the global stage. Before economics was even a formal academic study, the world economy operated within a mercantilist framework. The primary tenet of mercantilism was that, in order to amass as much gold as possible, an economy should focus on increasing its exports while decreasing its imports. In a world where people had not yet learned about economics, this made complete sense. If you wanted to be rich, you would accumulate as much gold as possible because it was nearly universally acknowledged as a store of value. Since the study of economics has shown that economic cooperation and free trade produce much more wealth overall because different regions have advantages in producing different items, and if we all just do what we're good at, the world becomes richer. Mercantilism is obviously not how we run our economies today. It also allows for the manufacturing of products that would be impossible within the borders of any one country, no matter how large. Seeing this video probably has a little monetary benefit for you right now, and you can thank technology for that. But don't discount the sophisticated economic structures behind the scenes making it all work. Silicon-rich quartz was essential to the production of the film you're watching right now. And you might guess the conclusion, but you'd be incorrect. The quartz rock mined in South America is processed into silicon and sent to a business called Zeiss in Germany, where it is shaped into a mirror with microscopic accuracy. To attain such a high degree of accuracy, machines are used to vaporize the silicon, with the vapor then being deposited atom by atom onto a mirror plate. The development of these devices relied on technological cooperation between dozens of European and North American academic institutions. Once completed, these mirrors are shipped to the Netherlands, where they are processed by a firm named ASML, using machinery known as fabs. Mirrors and strong lasers are used to etch designs for CPUs and GPUs into larger blocks of pure silicon. Chips designed by businesses like AMD, Intel, and NVIDIA are sent to fabs like TSMC, which then builds the chips. Companies like Foxconn get the chips and use them in conjunction with other cutting-edge parts to produce finished products like smartphones. A business like Apple will then take this unfinished smartphone and develop and market it to consumers around the world. That's a tiny fraction of the effort that goes into producing a high-tech item like a smartphone. I haven't addressed the businesses that move these goods, the security teams that monitor the entire supply chain, or the research facilities that are already trying to render obsolete the technology on which this system relies. It would be easy to dismiss this entire operation as nothing more than a technological miracle. But without the economic developments of people like Adam Smith, all that cooperation and free trade across dozens of countries and millions of workers would not have been feasible. Thanks to the insights of thinkers like Keynes, governments can now control the business cycle to ensure their economies benefit from both the booms and busts that occur as debt-fueled expansion and contraction occur. Most prominent economists now adhere to the neo-Keynesian school of thought, which explains how to steer an economy toward unprecedented levels of prosperity by controlling such variables as debt, employment, inflation, taxation, and supply-side output. It's tempting to believe that the mysteries of economics have been solved and that another period of rapid economic growth, like that which occurred between the end of mercantilism and the beginning of the business cycle, is impossible. However, it is obvious that there is much that we do not know. Limitations. So, perhaps a more fruitful line of inquiry is, what are the bounds of economics? There is no magic to economics. It can't make money out of thin air. It can only advise on how best to allocate resources in order to reach a predetermined goal. A thorough understanding of economics can help get a society where it needs to go, whether or not that end is the shared prosperity for which we all want. Economic forecasting is another area where the field falls short. After contributing to our current understanding of the economic cycle, John Maynard Keynes tried to increase his wealth by betting on the economy's periodic ups and downs. The plan failed. Predictions made by economists, whether they come true or not, are generally met with praise or criticism. They are to blame because they made forecasts when no one, least of all economists, can see into the future. A doctor's job is not to forecast a patient's medical future. Thus, if they indicated the patient's prognosis was healthy and there was nothing to worry about, and then the patient went on to get a dreadful illness, no one would blame the doctor. Just as economists might look at the data they have and conclude there is no need for concern, something else can always come along to disprove their assumptions. Forecasting the economy is not a good use of resources. Instead of predicting the future, they should provide present-day recommendations that foster economic growth and mitigate negative repercussions. The second disadvantage of economics is that it is a very challenging topic to study. Now, I don't intend to imply that understanding an indifference curve is outside the scope of an undergraduate education. There are many other topics that are much more challenging than economics, and I will freely concede that. I mean that it's hard to test new economic theories because you can't make an economy in a lab. And national economies aren't going to change the way they work to see if a new theory might make them better off in the long run, because if the new theory doesn't work, it could make millions of people's lives worse. This may sound discouraging, as the difficulties in investigating and validating economic ideas imply that development is slow. However, perhaps the slow pace of development means that future generations will continue to enjoy the fruits of economic prosperity. Somewhere out there is a system of economics that actively discourages the negative externalities that are so common in today's market economies, while still incentivizing innovation, employee motivation, and the efficient deployment of resources. Just how would that manifest itself? I have no idea. If I could prove that alternatively directing the world's economy would increase global prosperity, I'd be collecting my Nobel Prize right about now. We may know little about economics, but at least this time in history provides a rare opportunity to educate ourselves and be better prepared for the next time things become crazy. Friends, I appreciate you watching.